Geshe said, how many times is Kedrup going to have to get up today? I hope none. So, can everybody hear me all right and see me all right? And of course, Geshe, could you hear and see Geshe okay? All right, then let us get started. So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. So you can hear Geshe-la's voice as well. It's a bit softer. Okay. Jeez. So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody, and Geshe-la hopes that you are all well and happy and that things are improving, getting better and better in your life and in your practice. And he hopes that your study and your practice are both also continuously improving. So all of us here are coming out of a recognition that we call the self, or that we call the I, is something significant, is something precious. And we're coming here today to learn the strategies of how to bring that self, how to bring that I into a positive direction. So our aim, our ultimate goal, is something very, very high, something supreme. But the way that we reach that goal is actually through a gradual series of steps. And to be able to ascend all of these steps successfully, we need to apply the basis points so that we can begin to experience through our practice a more relaxed and stable body and mind, starting right from now. And as we go through our day-to-day life, we also want to have an attitude of observation to our mind. What are the thoughts that arise that are beneficial, and what are the thoughts that arise that make us unhappy, that cause us stress? What minds make us happy? So then all of the holy beings, those beings who we refer to as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for example, they checked the various types of mind that led to unhappiness and the types of mind that led to happiness. And in terms of that which is kind of undermining our happiness on the coarser level, the first mind that they identified is this mind that is constantly striving or acquiring, thinking, if I get this, or if this happens, I'll be happy. You could almost describe it as a type of grasping. So it starts with this sort of grasping attitude, thinking, if I acquire this, I'll definitely be satisfied. I'll be happy. And it could be certain things, or money or something like that. And it could be, people wanting somebody as a partner or a friend. And just this attitude thinking that if I get that, then I'll really be happy. And if we look behind that mind that's trying to grasp at something, that's trying to acquire something, we'll see that behind that attitude is a mind which is exaggerating the positive qualities, the desirable characteristics of that particular person or object, this mind of exaggeration. And that mind is what we call attachment. And this attachment can arise in relation to relatively small things and to larger things, to things of more consequence. And the second one, the second type of mindset which undermines our happiness is the mind of aversion that thinks this situation or this person did this to me, they did that to me. This is how it starts to manifest. And ko dugale di le manga sogire. Yeah. And we can see that behind that aversion, right, there's an exaggerated sense of the negativity of the person or the object. And this is connected with the affliction of anger. So, of course, the real situation of the person or the object might not quite be that bad, but due to our aversion, due to our dislike, we superimpose negative qualities on that person, or we exaggerate the negative characteristics that they have. And so, these minds of attachment and these minds of anger, it's easy to observe this kind of habit of exaggeration because these afflictions are quite coarse, right? And we mentioned that these two kind of mistaken minds are a little bit coarser. So what do they trace back to on the subtle level? They trace back to an incorrect conception of the self as being self-sufficient, rangkyawa, or we could also say independent, thinking that this thing is arising completely independently, not independence upon causes and conditions. So actually, if we trace back to this exaggerated sense of our I, of ourself, that thinks that I am self-sufficient, independent, I don't arise dependently upon anything, I am completely sort of a stable individual. Based upon this exaggerated sense of self, So based upon this exaggerated sense of self, based upon this exaggerated sense of self, that I or that self is reified. And then whenever that self is confronted somehow by not getting the things, sorry, younger son. So when we encounter these difficult situations because of the inflated sense of self, based upon that false conception that is not in accord with reality, then that anger and that attachment will be more prominent. So of course, to really kind of understand this and the mistaken conception of the self as self-sufficient or independent, to realize emptiness, this is something a little bit difficult. But if we think about it through these steps, we should be able to come to a general understanding, actually. So we can see kind of the trunk or the root of the tree as this ignorance grasping at the self, and the two main branches as these subsidiary afflictions, anger and attachment. So our task now is to really kind of shift this mistaken conception and address these afflictions. That's our task. So whether we talk about the self, the I, whether we talk about my mind, whether we talk about the aggregates, what we want to be able to do is to see or to apprehend these things as they really are, right? Unmistakably. And it is from different sort of understandings of these issues that even within the Buddha's teaching, for example, we see different presentations like the Druptamawaji, the 4 schools of tenets. And to be able to perceive the way things really are, really correctly, we need to start with a peaceful body and mind. So let us begin with that. So we are bringing the 4 elements within us into harmony, into equilibrium. Like a great bird that glides in the sky, think that the body and mind are light and at peace. Think that like clear water with the particles settled, the mind and the body are pure, clear, relaxed. So just like the particles or the pollution are abiding within the water, but are not actually the water itself, in the same way, the afflictions or the stains cover the mind, but they are not the nature of the mind itself. Any mind that disturbs us, any mind that is afflicted, it is not the true nature of our mind or consciousness. It is something adventitious, something that can be removed. if we're able to completely clear away these adventitious defilements that cover the mind, we will be able to experience a state of perfect, lasting peace. So I wish to be able to lead both myself and others to this state of perfect happiness. And for this purpose, I will make prayers, requests, and so forth. So I'm going to, adjust our sound. I haven't figured out a way to do this without getting up. See it anymore. Dave, is there a reason why I'm not seeing the sound for musicians tab? Can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, if you've changed your configuration significantly or have a new install or a new machine, yeah, it's something you have to turn on in the config first before it'll show up on the video as an option.
I didn't change anything, but Zoom did update. So maybe we'll have to leave it for today. I'm sorry. Sure. I don't think it's worth going through all the motions and taking the time. Do you?
It also changes the sensitivity.
Yeah, no. So we'll have to leave it for today. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, dig it. So shit on ya yabo Raymond, wa. Jibuja chikir, during shark. Yeah. So we'll just try to do maybe like a standard chanting so it carries better. Yeah. Tumba chom den de jin sheba dra chom ba yanda bar zobe sangye jeba dang Shabsudemba Devarsheba Jiden Gemba Gebudube Kalo Gyorwa Lana Meba Lada Minamgi Tempa Sangye Chondende Begyawa Shakya Tubala Chazelo Chede Kyabsu Chi Dönba çomdende deje şeba dracomba yandaba zobe sanje rebadan şabzı demba deva şeba jiden cemba çebu duve kalo jorwa lana meba ladam binamgi demba sanje çomdende pegyava şakya tubala Chazelo Chede Gyabsu Ji Ho Tenpa chomden de deshin sheba drachompa yang dapa zope sonje riba tang shabdu tenpa dewa sheba shiden chenpa chebu dewe kalo jurwa lana mepa lada mi namgi tenpa sonje chomden de Jawa Shakya Tupa La Chause Lo Chede Kyabsu Chi. So we'll do the prayers to Guru Rinpoche. Because I'm aware if I try to sing the tune, the sound's not going to carry. We'll just chant it kind of in a very simple tune today. 나저 디 셰탕야 조기면 도와라 나저 남긴기 조탕 되기로와 교탕 레라고 조기.
야야야.
Yeah. Ogin yogi nyoshan sam pema gesa dombola yatsen chegi ngedro nye pema jone shezu tra kodu kanjo mambo ko kegi jesu daju gi jinji loji shezu so guru pema sidi. Oma hum benza guru pema sidi oma 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 oma benza guru pema sidi oma benza guru pema sidi oma. Oma hum benza guru pema sidi. Also do a simple mandala. So ji peki joji medo chan rira linzi nidi gyamba di sange jindo mide boba gi jogo nanda jila jebar sho ida guru ratna mendala kam niryatayami. Refuge and bodhicitta. Chedam soki chenam la janchu bardu dani gyatsu chi dagi chenyen gibe sonam gi jola penjir sangi dropar sho. Chedam soki chenam la janchu bardu dani gyatsu chi dagi chenyen gibe sonam gi jola penjir sangi drobar sho. Chedam soki chenam la jancho bardu dani gyatsu chi dagi chenyen gibe sonam gi jola penjir sangi drobar sho.
오야 다 걸롱은 니까라 레소이
Yes.
어 걸롱은 니까라 다 처음에 세르지 봐 좀아서 인서 빠지도 뭐
And think as I take the steps to develop the motivation, let me make sure that any distracting or meaningless thoughts are cleared from my mind.
어다세 어다세 윤중간 걸 레레서 자이스
Therefore, I'm going to place my attention, my awareness on the rising and falling of the breath, the mindfulness of the breath.
교매를 초와 노도를 지든 야지고 그냥 주신 거지 파스 유대마도 건설을 같이 만두 성같이
And think any distracting thoughts that may arise, just let them fall away. In that way, they will be like very small minnows that swim beneath the surface of the ocean, but do not disturb it.
리세 쇼와다 레레 좌소
In this way, the body and mind are stable and at peace.
메 레와야고 메 세야바다 고시다바지
I'm going to make sure that this precious human body and this human mind that I have can become something of meaning, something worthwhile.
거인 에서 샤와 추추 던들었다 고 코네든 자기서 메 상바다
Within this situation of samsara, I'm going to try not to obsess over the small situations or inconveniences that will inevitably arise.
좀 너난도리 주슬 다와이나요다 대완데 바지바 이거 문제 바다 지바지 조이마다 야가 되는 거
And as I expand my awareness outwards, I'll see that there's absolutely no difference between myself and others in terms of the fact that we all wish to avoid every suffering and we all wish to achieve every happiness. Therefore, I will not hold some close and others distant.
다도시 내내 지름으로 타려고다 리요 바디 지바지 조리도 뭐 야가 되는
In terms of the actual potential to be able to reach a final state of lasting happiness, that potential abides within every single living being. So in this way, there is no real difference between us.
얘네 스트리지야 있어봐 강가자 하시무신 거다 왜 누간다고 그러다고 얘네 스트리지도
So if we understand this level of reality, this commonality of all of us, then within this vast assembly of sentient beings, there's not a single one that I could really honestly consider an enemy.
이제 뭐 그토네다 이제 그때는 지금 조를 다시 되는 때야지다 고가다 소소 오는 거다 이게 되고
And understanding the reality of this situation of our closeness to all six types of beings within samsara, think I must lead them to happiness.
이체다 나스데아다 조주세바티네 순질도 더 된대서
In order to be able to do that effectively, I will definitely take the I or the self on the path of the bodhisattva and eventually to complete and perfect Buddhahood.
리네서 야보데 셀 템바 존지 처음에 초와노 도리 차바샤와 이바 야도 어쨌든 리네서 야보데 셀 제위 제위디 처음에 초와노 도리 차바샤와 이바 인도
And think from recollecting these positive qualities and from recollecting the reality of the situation of closeness, then any sort of negative imprints or habits within the mind will be melted away, just like ice gets melted away with a warm, gentle rain. And think to be able to arise the mind of this intention connected with the attitudes of love and compassion means I am supremely fortunate. So we'll pause there. I'm just explaining to Geshe that I think you won't be able to hear the bell anyway, so I maybe don't need to bother ringing it. But as long as you can hear our voices, that's the main thing. I think that's okay. So in terms of the motivations that we have established, sort of the aims that we have established, we need to understand that if that we call the self or that we call the I is not able to bring forth bodhicitta and travel the path of the bodhisattva to complete enlightenment, we will not be able to complete these really. And also this striving for the benefit of others, we shouldn't think that it is something that is separate or isolated from our own welfare or well-being. In fact, it's the best way to secure our ultimate welfare. And because we understand that as we work in these altruistic activities, we begin a process of purifying our mind. And as our mind becomes purified, the result is that we'll be happier and happier. And so then in terms of reaching this state of Buddhahood for the benefit of others, all of the great scholars kind of agree that this requires us to cultivate the paths of the three scopes. And the paths of the three scopes were kind of first proposed or systematized by the great scholar Atisha in his text Lamp of the Path. And it is on the basis actually of the teachings presented in Atisha's text Lamp for the Path that Longchenpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, and all of the other great Tibetan masters kind of formulated these stages of the path teachings. And in order to be able to reach that state of complete enlightenment, we need to have a thorough understanding and practice of the three scopes. And it is for that purpose that we engage with this text of Words of My Perfect Teacher.
Dza Patrul Rinpoche tanda kazula misha litso mabo Dza Patrul yina koro lama ka chimbo menga no ke lama chi ha levi tombol ha levi kange chimbo
Kange chimbo kongso baragi kange chimbo
ya koro ni tombol lama matenge la
ale chambo mendu dabochi
ya ki ha levi shi chimbo tonde
ale. And one thing that Geshe wanted to share with you, one of the lamas from who Dza Patrul Rinpoche received the instructions that are part of what make up these teachings, he had great difficulty with. And the reason is because he perceived a lot of faults in that particular lama. And so there's many stories about that we can share with you on future sessions. But basically, Patrul Rinpoche was kind of so disturbed by the faults that he perceived in this particular teacher that he was actually ready to leave the relationship behind. He thought, I can never rely on this person as a guru. I need to move on. In fact, it wasn't until that Lama was able to manifest some sort of siddhis, some sort of miracle powers, that Patrul Rinpoche was able to have confidence in him. So we will come to more discussion of that later. Yeah. And so then in terms of where we are in the text, we are in the part where we are discussing the conduct and the motivations.
Yeah.
And we talked about the 3 defects of the pot, and generally we talked about the types of things that need to be avoided when listening to the teachings. And so in terms of the 3 defects of the pot, the upside down pot, pot with a hole, and pot containing poison, we covered the first 2 of those quite extensively. And just as a reminder, the antidotes that Geshe proposed for the 3 defects of the pot, in terms of the antidote for the upside down pot, it is a mind that strives in training in hearing. So mind that strives towards the first of the 3 trainings in hearing, contemplation, meditation, training in hearing or listening. And a mind that strives at the second of those 3 trainings, training in contemplation. This training in contemplation is a natural antidote to the pot with the hole in it.
And
the third training, if we strive in the training of meditation, this will be a natural antidote to the pot containing poison. This is also often translated as the contaminated pot. So although this isn't mentioned specifically in the text, Geshe thinks this is a really useful way to remember this particular teaching, that when we think about the 3 faults of the pot, upside down, whole, and contaminated, that the antidotes to this are striving in the 3 trainings of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Dukgi. Yeah, the pot containing poison, if you listen to the teachings with the wrong attitude, such as the desire to become great or famous, or a mind full of the 5 poisons, the Dharma will not only fail to help your mind, it will also be changed into something that is not Dharma at all, like nectar poured into a pot containing poison.
So of course, you
So what this is explaining actually is from the perspective of both the speaker, the person teaching the Dharma, and the person listening to the Dharma. If one is teaching or listening to the Dharma with a motivation that is tainted, for example, by pride or jealousy or a wish to become famous, or by the 3 poisonous afflictions or the 5 poisonous afflictions, even though it is the Dharma that is being taught and it is the Dharma that is being listened to, because of these underpinning sort of taints, it actually doesn't become a practice of Dharma. So the example that's given here is like a pot containing something contaminated. So for example, if we have some food that stayed in the bottom of the pot and went rotten or something like that, then even if we place a lot of nice food in the pot on top of that, everything that is in there is going to become tainted or contaminated. So of course, as one is speaking or listening to the Dharma, there's going to be kind of mistakes in terms of information or understanding. But what we don't want to do Notru yongyores yene kare sabsabchegores.
이나 쇼리도
Mhm.
다 드리고 다 지시키 녀게 강가려 봐 이나 다 디그냐 빠치 뭐지도 야레스.
But what we want to do is get rid of inflated or sectarian or superior attitudes when we speak or listen to the Dharma, because those are actually quite serious faults.
어다 간조 로조도 녀레서 다 뭐좀뭐 뭐야보지 자야 치. 왔어.
So the practice and the teaching of the Dharma both are to elevate us so that we can become honest, better human beings. This is their very purpose.
어다 드리치래. 의사는 돼서.
Yeah.
어야.
So we'll continue.
이나 자가르 동비종 치년비티스 르다 잘라 년바 따버시기. 뭐
Mhm.
솜비티스 슝이 륜데바 따버시기. 곰비티스 렘비 로뉴아 따버시기. 년보 간디. 드비티스 요아토기 짜사와 따버시기. 디비티 년마 찔레토와 따버시기.
This is why the Indian sage Padampa Sangye said, "Listen to the teachings like a deer listening to music. Contemplate them like a northern nomad shearing sheep. Meditate on them like a dumb person savoring food. Practice them like a hungry yak eating grass. Reach their results like the sun coming out from behind the clouds."
어다 강가 빼도 되니 년보 주주랜데 와서는 안 그냥 거야 고마 터져요. 먼저 빼 년보.
So Geshe said it's actually a really beautiful verse. And in terms of the examples that are given, right, they're very evident. There's nothing difficult to understand here.
어다 세제르다 다 른걸 뭐야 와서 건저 잔년보 할레비 쳐서나 대뒤에 쳐 그게 저할 레비 쳐바티게 템보 주니 되가 봐이나 까 디딜 다 멘다 자켓들이 그래서 매바서 길레바이나 건저 뭐한테 차도요.
So listen to the teachings like a deer listening to music. This actually touches on one of the characteristics of the deer, which is their hearing. So it's said if they hear like music or actually any other pleasant sound, because of their refined hearing, it brings forth a very pleasant feeling and an attachment. And for that reason, when there is a pleasant sound, even if a hunter perhaps comes with an arrow, ready to shoot them, they won't notice that, right? They will be so captivated by the sound.
벨리는 리아스를 른거 요아스는 주 만다와지 아르스.
Yak,
른거야.
rigogi, yak.
리야. 릴데디 거로.
Loso.
어다 대지티데 다스 거로 세간도 거로 와서 뭐.
Oh,
세간도 비가 거로서 또 시에서 봐. 야요. 시주주.
Xing.
디세는 봐.
Ale. Yaboko maso. Xing sena karere.
시 단데는
Oh,
시동 주주들이 알아와.
yeah.
디세를 파장도 나스. 뭐. 세시워서 요 대지 건저 세가와. 그 세그리 다 카드 곧 멘데잖아 건저 진도가와.
Loso.
뭐 녀를 가르서 건저 시에서 봐.
Xingtong ki jabrola degi.
시도 뭐요나.
Yeah.
디세를 봐 건저 도요. 알았어 뭐.
Ale, Xingtong nangla partodes. So there's another type of creature which seems to be some sort of wild or mountain yak. And because when those yaks are on a wide field or a plain, then they would be able to get away from the hunter. The first step is that the hunter tries to push them into like a more wooded area. Shinak nangla jogi.
다 신화도 시기셀 신화로 말단도 그래. 셀 판도 사소나.
Yeah.
그래서 나와 주그 알레비 첨부도 보여 알아와.
Yeah.
디그 뿌대지 신고 통로요.
Ale. And it is said that as these wild yaks go into the forest, which is kind of with this heavy brush, they have this very beautiful tail with many hairs. And often that tail gets caught in the vegetation.
다 텐도비가 텐디서 대사선 건강 나와도 토소나 나와로 첫 할레비 첨부여자 멘다 자킬레 바이노 건도 디기요.
And because their tail is kind of one of their best physical features, these mountain yaks, they're very attached to their tail. So if their tail gets tangled in some brush or something like that, they will try to untangle it. And in that way, they will become vulnerable to the hunter. So that's a little bit like this example, right, of the deer, that if it's totally captivated by the music, it makes it vulnerable to those hunters. So Geshe said, for those of you who are familiar with Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stages of the path, you'll have recognized this example of the mountain yaks with the very beautiful tail. Yeah, so actually, both these examples are kind of pointing to an attitude of attachment. So if we've really trained in the first training of hearing or listening, that's the kind of sort of captivated attitude with which we will listen to the teachings. Contemplate them like a northern nomad shearing sheep. So when it comes time to contemplate on the teachings that we've heard, we want to do this systematically in steps with attention. Yeah. So that's like the nomad, right? That when he's shearing the wool off the sheep, or she is shearing the wool off the sheep, they can't do it carelessly, right? They have to first start with a little bit and then do it gradually until they finish. So I don't really, I'm sorry for the word that's here, dumb. I think that's like not very politically correct. We can say a person lacking hearing. So meditate on them like a person lacking hearing savoring food. Yes. Yeah. So don't be, Geshe is saying that this person, when you savor the teachings, don't be Chengyu Belpo. So Chengyu Belpo is like kind of an overly discursive thinking, oh, if it's this, oh, if it's that, oh, if it's this, kind of like a doubtful mind. So don't be like that, right? Just enjoy. So the person who is kind of has this overly discursive, wandering type of mind, even if he or she has a very delicious food in front of them, they won't be able to enjoy the sweet or the savory taste because their mind is just going to be going from object to object. And actually, this over discursiveness we can see in the present time in the world. This is perhaps one of the main sort of obstacles to practice. It's quite a serious issue. Yeah. So Candice Lagore, amchot mi kogen diro. So a person who is not overly discursive, right, whose mind is not flitting from object to object, he or she is able to enjoy that experience. For example, the experience of eating the delicious food. So actually, like in Tibetan families, often if a child kind of wolfs down the food without appreciating the taste, they'll often get scolded for that, right? So the idea is that we should savor. Yes. So the idea here is that by savoring the teachings, we are able to mix them with the mind. And it is when we mix the teachings with the mind that they'll actually lead to that happiness. So understanding the reasons that we have to be happy, understanding the preciousness of our current circumstances in life, right? Like we should develop a taste for all these points. So for example, if we don't recognize our current good situation, and if we don't kind of take a moment to savor and contemplate that teaching, what will happen is the self-cherishing attitude will continue to dominate, and we will be continuously dissatisfied, always thinking that things are not good enough.
어다 롱 진짜도 롱을 째와야 바니 때 만라와 첨부치 손도 그야.
And the thing that has to be mentioned here is when we speak about self-cherishing, this is a very different attitude to the often used phrase these days of self-compassion, right? They're not the same at all.
롱 진짜 세대한테 소소 끼고 마도 제 손도 사 매비 다 사전라고 지소야.
The way that self-cherishing functions is one is so obsessed with one's own happiness that one completely disregards the welfare and need of others.
롱을 째와 첨부요는 저요요 그거를 와서 요 간으로 그거요 하래서 롱을 째와 요게 때 롱대오 손도 주그래라 아니 대대도 녀들 얘기 돼요 그게 손도 사요 받지 소리 하래서.
So self-compassion, if we could propose a pathway forward for that, because of course we want to have compassion for ourselves and our welfare, but self-compassion is a mind that leaves room to also consider the welfare of others. So we think of the welfare of ourselves and the welfare of our others both.
다 던지지요나 강에 쉬나요 할레비 누가 맞아 봐. 아까서 좋아. 아니 할레비 끼고 쉬나요 그게 셀 얘도 데데가 이제 좋아지냐도.
So actually this self-compassion, if we develop it in the way that was proposed, this will help us to have a more realistic mind. When we encounter problems, we have that awareness that we are not the only person in the world. And so those problems are less disturbing. Similarly, when we experience happiness or good circumstances, we'll think this happiness and these good circumstances only arise in connection to others, right? So it's a more wholesome mind.
어다 대지 여와시 할레비 같이 뭐 마도 롱 진짜도 어다를 째와 매거세 하라고 손서 쉬나 대고 놓아지.
So this needs to be clarified, because if we're thinking that when we talk about the faults of self-cherishing, what that means I'm not allowed to care about myself or have compassion about myself, this is something that often arises for folks, and it's a mistaken understanding. So it's important to be clear on this point.
어다 간주 치레레네 주때 다 좋아치 뭐 니와 이자 대뇨토서로 다 단단히 끼고 때내 거 주야.
So if we are able to experience each word of dharma that we hear as a delicious food that we are slowly savoring, then what we hear is going to be applied and make a difference in our life.
어디서 다 드비티스 요토기 짜사와 다비시기.
Practice them like a hungry yak eating grass.
어다치 드비티스라 요기 짜사비깔 짜르지르 마 이제도 계사 차소사로 요래.
So at the time of practice, be like that yak. The yak is completely undisturbed eating grass and eats it very methodically, right? Until one patch is kind of completely empty.
This one. 어디서 달래. 디비티스 녀마 찔리 좋아 다비시기. 다데 걸리라 버린도 왔어.
Reach their result like the sun coming out from behind the clouds.
어다 세다 노지는 아주 세계가 센저 로지게서 원인에 대여 앞에 다시 비깔라 정확한가 앞에 뒤만도 있고 양도야 지려 맞고 대도요.
So this is where we really see that this is where we really see the truth of the teaching that the nature of the mind is pure luminosity, right? The defilements are adventitious. In this way, once they are cleared away, it's like the sun shining from behind the clouds. And recognizing this is actually the best profit that we could ever come to. This should motivate us to practice the teachings. So we need to engage in the task of practice in a stable way, because although this coarse physical body will fall away, we understand that the extremely subtle body, the subtle mind, and that we call the I or the self will continue on uninterruptedly. This is the reason we need to practice. And because that we call the self and my mind can reach a state of complete happiness that is everlasting. This is a great purpose to which we are striving.
Oh, this is tar chinyen this na de lu ja gen this wa. Da ping ge da la cha de. So ni ngen bi tun dan no chu. Mago wa sme nya ba don da wa. Li pa yo me chma tu. Lo thamo ja de no do yin ji ba ma che ba nye gi ba le.
When listening to the teachings, you should be like a deer so entranced by the sound of the vina that it does not notice the hidden hunter shooting his poisoned arrow. Put your hands together, palm to palm, and listen, every pore on your body tingling and your eyes wet with tears, never letting any other thought get in the way.
Lichita de dejo se no to ke shila dong. Macha che te goshi. Kaye to me shi ne nyembi magoni di kas kate to rocheso gejonja number no cho jani nyegi.
Geshe is not. It is no good listening with only your body physically present, while your mind wanders off after your thoughts and your speech lets loose a rich store of gossip, saying whatever you like and looking around everywhere. When listening to teachings, you should even stop reciting prayers, counting mantras, or whatever other meritorious activities you may be doing.
Oh, that's a little no Oh, that lila warende was. That linga rusu tachi sa do tachi the leva ina yo. Se casa calendota ina.
Yeah.
On that petu ya.
So a basic point, right? Although your body might be physically present in the hall where the dharma is being taught, if the mind is completely somewhere else and not paying attention, it's not going to be of much benefit.
Oh, that deal jawa ngawa ke dunia bochi tangine ina mena dunia bochi ya te teaching kale kale shi is.
Yeah, and that's a yeah. So connected with this, towards the end of the class, Geshe will share a story about the fifth Dalai Lama.
Oh, this one. Oh, yeah. Geshe no ba ja nye ke wa. Oh, this one. Oh, that ta nye ni chung xie bi de da yi la zhu de ma je ba shi ne jan de nyo se le gi.
After you have listened properly to a teaching in this way, it is then also important to retain the meaning of what has been said without ever forgetting it and to continually put it into practice.
Oh, taba chenbi chung, ngen che la tabi ta tenji, taba rola rali shipa danar.
For as the great sage, so the great sage, of course, refers to Lord Buddha. As the great sage himself said, I have shown you the methods that lead to liberation, but you should know that liberation depends upon yourself. So to fully comprehend the meaning of this verse is actually not something so simple, because this verse is actually something that should be absolutely transformative for us. Because what it shows us is if we didn't have the potential to actualize liberation, to actualize realization, the Buddha would not have said this. The Buddha is telling us that liberation, really accomplishing the welfare of others as well, this is a responsibility that is in our hands. It's not something that another can actualize for us. So, in order to achieve this realization, you don't need to move to a different country. You don't need to buy beautiful and expensive equipment or supplies. You only need to commit to transforming your mind. So actually, when His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama was younger, he had a great teacher known as Kunu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen. And he kind of said, when he was reading about bodhicitta and enlightenment, he was kind of wondering, like, are these things really possible? And this was kind of the verse we just covered was related in the answer by Kunu Lama. Kunu Lama said, to realize a bodhicitta it doesn't require us buying expensive or fancy supplies or expensive materials. It merely requires us to transform our mind. The teacher gives the disciple instructions explaining how to listen to the Dharma and how to apply it, how to give up negative actions, how to perform positive ones, and how to practice. It is up to the disciple to remember these instructions, forgetting nothing, to put them into practice and realize them. Just listening to the Dharma is perhaps of some benefit by itself, but unless you remember what you hear, you will not have the slightest knowledge of either the words or the meaning of the teaching, which is no different than not having heard it at all. And also another thing that is important to understand is that in this relationship between the speaker of the Dharma or the teacher and the student, if you hear something that, according to your understanding, is in contravention, is not in accord with the Dharma, you can distinguish that and disregard it. The Buddha also stated this very clearly. Oh, yeah. So you'll remember the story of one of the early disciples of the Buddha, Angulimala, right? Angulimala, he wore this kind of rosary of, I think it was the thumbs of, hundreds of people that had been killed. But he did those evil actions because of taking instructions from a false teacher. But even Angulimala, right, he became like this sun that was parted from the clouds, right? He was able to purify that and later reach realization. Yeah. Geshe yar lama to chila loto par chitula sasa ngaja to chese la so mge tupa to chipe na nyeso ge geshe pi tedo pongi. If you remember the teachings but mix them with your negative emotions, they will never be the pure Dharma. As the peerless Dza Patrul Rinpoche says, so this is Gampopa, I believe. Unless you practice Dharma according to the Dharma, Dharma itself becomes the cause of evil rebirths. Rid yourself of every wrong thought concerning the teacher and the Dharma. Do not criticize or abuse your spiritual brothers and companions. Be free of pride and contempt. Abandon bad thoughts. For all these cause lower rebirths. Yeah. So not much to explain here, pretty self-evident, pretty easy. So in terms of talking about the motivation, right, we just had a very extensive explanation of the 3 defects of the pot. So now the text goes on to explain another topic known as the 6 stains. Yeah, so don't listen passively, because these are things that are relevant to us, like in our own practice. So you can contemplate what we've heard and then think, which of these are the ones that are troubling me? Which of these faults that are mentioned are blocks to my own practice? So we are now about halfway down page 12 in the Padmakara edition. The 6 stains. In the well-explained reasoning, it says, pride, lack of faith, and lack of effort, outward distraction, inward tension, and discouragement. These are the 6 stains. Yeah. 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 Nangjudutra. Lopamya. Daboji. Yeah. Samjuchaya. Yeah. So just explaining pride, a lack of faith, and a lack of effort. So those are the first three. The lack of effort, it's actually, they're not saying sundru, they're saying dondu nyerwa. So I would say it's actually a lack of striving here. And then outward distraction, a mind that's going out, inward tension, obsessed inwardly, and becoming discouraged.
我就是把7年比拉米种7年7比拉米拉玛里种俺老娘比俺家7多拉玛拉玛对吧7了点点没吧谁谁说就伊拉能把用我不过俺弄的对吧7的一找吧说起说话的这么主播的不给
So avoid these 6, proudly believing yourself superior to the teacher who is explaining the Dharma, not trusting the master or their teachings, failing to apply yourself to the Dharma, getting distracted by external events, focusing your 5 senses too intently inwards, and being discouraged if, for example, a teaching goes too long.
我当我都说，我打七八多年别干了一那嘞，我打看第一那，他俺家的我那把全部去也得啥把些把些做干。
So one thing for both the teacher and the listener of the Dharma that can be very dangerous is pride connected with these teachings. So pride not only prevents qualities from manifesting, but it can also lead to the production of faults.
我别全部去了，俺家去了也得没着。这头文过了咋些个嘛嘞？咋了？Yeah.
So there's a Tibetan kind of, I guess we could call it a proverb that says, with pride, qualities are impossible. Just like on a very sharply peaked rock mountain, grass cannot grow.
我打电东西得几波儿嘛了哇，等你肉把石头一那过着，全部穿干来看过去。
And also, we see that a prideful or arrogant person, it becomes really hard for them to have like harmonious relationships with their friends and so forth as well.
我打摩托车这个对吧？我打开出这些菜，嘛，吉姆拉里巴都可罗罗马尼，我打吉姆拉加个罗马尼还是俺，可能俺查什么原因？
Yeah. So just remembering the story of Milarepa and his disciple. His disciple was kind of having some thoughts like, maybe I actually know more than Milarepa. So then Milarepa was able, through kind of like some cities, able to go inside the I think it was a ram's or a yak's horn during the rainstorm. And he said, if you're, to his disciple, if you're so highly attained, then come in here where it's dry. So we also know that, for example, Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was teaching the devas, the godlike beings of the desire realm, because those beings have a lot of pleasant characteristics, they are very prideful. So in order to subdue that pride, so they'd be suitable to teach, the Buddha had to manifest a great radiance from his own body that outshone their own. So Geshe-la's quoting a verse because Geshe-la's memorized most of the Abhisamayalankara, the ornament of clear realizations. I have not, but it has to do something with that radiance of an enlightened being that can overcome pride. And Geshe-la was saying you'll find that in the second chapter of the Abhisamayalankara, the ornament of clear realizations. So pride is a great fault and something that must be subdued. Yeah. So, and also the other thing, without faith or confidence, similarly, we won't be able to give rise to qualities or realizations. So just like a child requires a mother at the beginning of one's practice of the Dharma, faith or confidence is necessary. Yeah. Jawa. Yeah, so of all the negative emotions, pride and jealousy are the most difficult to recognize. Therefore, examine your mind minutely. Any feeling that there is something even the least bit special about your own qualities, whether worldly or spiritual, will make you blind to your own faults and unaware of others' good qualities. So renounce pride and take a low position.
딱 니스 까버레지다. 니스 까버로르베. 나자도 되지. 니스 깔레 까버레지도 와서 나자 차도 니다.
So Geshe is saying that actually recognizing pride and jealousy, even just recognizing when they arise, that's not always such an easy thing, is it?
다 소설을 다 예된다고 가려요 봐이나 이텔라 다 나자지 요바이나. 뒤 온게더니 내서 뭐지 ቋ로.
Yeah, so we should really see that this pride actually, because it kind of deceives us into thinking like we're doing pretty well, we have qualities we don't possess, it very practically blocks the generation of new qualities. And also because of pride, right, it prevents us from seeing the qualities in others, which can also lead to all kinds of problems. Yeah. And so it is said that actually for a practitioner, for a scholar, any person seriously engaged with the dharma, we should have our two eyes, one going outward to observe the qualities of others and one going inward to contemplate our own faults. If we're always looking outwardly, and not only that, but with a critical attitude, we'll spend so much time observing the faults of others and not come to much benefit. So if we have this balanced attitude of the two eyes, or one hand going outwards and one hand working inwards, then we'll have a realistic view and be able to develop beneficial things. Because if we're continually obsessed with the faults of others, right, then we won't even be able to see what's happening within ourselves and to come to good results from our practice. So we're on the bottom of page 12, coming to the top of page 13. If you have no faith, the entrance to the Dharma is blocked. Of the four types of faith, aim for faith that is irreversible. So we can see the faith as like the mother. It is the preliminary required for the development of every quality. And so from within the four different types of faith, it's the irreversible faith, which is the most stable. And so that's the one we want to aim for. Yeah. So these four types of faith, because they're not mentioned specifically in the text, we'll just give them to you here. They are vivid faith, eager faith, confident faith, and irreversible faith. So this faith, which is kind of connected with striving, that's that eager faith, right? That looks at a positive quality like love, compassion, or bodhicitta, and thinks like, I want that, right? I want to be able to achieve that. Why irreversible faith is proposed as the best is because once irreversible faith has been realized, then without, difficult exertion or effort, one will naturally strive in one's virtuous activities. So, we can see that oftentimes in our kind of own sort of history with the Dharma, right? There's going to be sort of a few months where we are really kind of diligent in our practice, but then maybe what we're expecting doesn't happen. And so then like we kind of get discouraged and we put it aside. This shows that we haven't yet achieved that irreversible faith. Yeah, so if you can understand these four: vivid faith, eager faith, confident faith, and irreversible faith, that would be really good. There's actually in the Padmakara a footnote here that you can look those four up.
Shila tenye shepana yete toche je teji yimbi tenye randi tasa le shi randi tasa gong. Shila tenye mashina chi zawa ni mandro.
Yeah. So your interest in the Dharma is the basis of what you will achieve. Depending on whether your degree of interest is superior, middling, or inferior, you'll become a superior, middling, or inferior practitioner. And if you are not at all interested in the Dharma, there will be no results at all.
So the
Dharma is nobody's property. It belongs to whoever has the most endeavor.
So
nobody owns the Dharma and decides like whether they can give us the Dharma or not, right? The Dharma is something that is always available, and our success within it depends on our own determination to study and practice. And also a warning here that when we talk about the practice of Dharma, right, there's different lineages or traditions that we might practice. So saying the Dharma that I'm practicing is the correct one and the other ones are inferior, right? This is a great fault. So we practice internally what works for us, but we should not criticize the other systems. You can say, for my mind, right, this is the most effective. If we state it like that, there's no fault there. In fact, His Holiness the Dalai Lama speaks of all of the religious systems of this vast world as like a beautiful garden with different colored flowers. When he was teaching at a school in India, he shared that. Yeah. You can say that's my favorite flower or favorite color. Of course, you know, you're allowed to say that. So then Geshe is just stating that now, because we all want to be able to have a long and a stable life, we will turn to the explanation of the Long Life Sutra. Shoku Hambo Hamas Nanso Nanso Kawaya. Sorry, just give me a moment. Ini dejin sheba dra chompa yandapa zope sange sedang yeshe padu mepa shintu nampar ngepa GC gyabo she chawa shukto. So Geshe said that actually he's remembering that last time when we were talking about the qualities of the Buddha Amitayus, we talked about the 5 qualities of an enjoyment body, and he thinks that one of these qualities we actually left out. Yeah, chatsang lam na yamore do again. Tambo?
Tombo chingen ba teche ki chimba shi suwa.
Yeah.
Nipadi? Nipa dingen ba kwa chasi mato ka ba du ju ba.
Korwa.
Dingen ba kor.
Kor.
Kor ngen ba chonji zamba papa jojo ko ne jo.
Yeah. Sumpa?
Dingen ba dingen ba dise.
Yeah.
Kwa chasi mato ka ba de ba.
Yeah. Jipa?
Jipa karjes. Katsangama kare.
Ku, supo.
Kengeba tsebe sa zo jipa.
Yeah. Aning apa?
Yeah,
Okay, yes, yes. The two of us together, we are good. Okay, so in terms of these 5 excellences of the enjoyment body, the first is the excellent dharma. They speak the excellent Mahayana dharma. The second is the excellent assembly. They are surrounded by an assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The third is an excellent time in terms of an actual increment of time. The enjoyment body will remain until samsara is empty. The fourth is an excellent body endowed with all of the marks and signs. And the fifth is an excellent abode, the place where the enjoyment body abides. So these are the 5 excellent qualities of the Sambhogakaya, or the 5 excellent qualities of the enjoyment body. Yeah, so these are, when we talk about becoming a Buddha, right, these are some of the principal qualities of that Buddha that one becomes. So we are continuing, I believe, on page 5. So Manjushri, there is a world called unfathomable qualities. There, the Tathagata, having destroyed the enemy, the fully completed Buddha, called unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, extremely discerning aspect, victorious glorification, is abiding, revealing dharma to sentient beings while holding and completing life. Gonda, konso gonglo jabardu detubya diloimbe. Yeah. Listen, youthful Manjushri, the human beings of Zambuling have a short life, living only to the age of 100. From those, almost all experience untimely death. So actually, it talks about this kind of particular increment of time for human beings as being that time where they can reach 100. So in the scriptures, what it says is that gradually this lifespan will decrease and decrease and decrease and decrease to the point where the maximum lifespan is the age of 10. And then from that age of 10, it will start to increase and increase and increase and increase. And, you know, some scriptures saying that one even comes to the point of 10,000-year lifespans. So we also understand, though, that, and it's according to the teachings of the Buddha, that although we might be abiding during an increment of time where the lifespan is said to be 100 years, most of us are not going to reach that 100 years because we will encounter illnesses or other obstacles, which will cause our untimely death. But if we understand this obstacle, and we make praises and requests to Amitayus, then because he has completely perfected the city of limitless life, on the basis of his blessing and so forth, obstacles can be reduced and lifespan can be increased. And so, you know, this is actually also the case with holy beings, though in that case, it's also connected to our karma. We understand that holy beings can often manifest an untimely death. And it is for this reason that we engage in the practices of offering the tenshuk, the long life pujas, prayers for their well-being, and so forth. Yeah, konso meto puya
chona chunga pa de shedom meto do pieto chwa to shiba do chama no ji cheban jawa de do ge chen yus se ba chelo jato wanjaro.
And then the next verse, so we're now on page 6 in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's translation. Manjushri, the life will be Manjushri, any sentient being who writes or lets others write, listens to just the mere name, reads or keeps in house this class of teachings called the completely expressing praise of the qualities of the Tathagata, the unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, and also those who have completely finished their life, if they offer flowers, incense, garlands, ornaments, and incense powder, they will be able to live for another 100 years.
다 제보면 다 보게 대화도 다 대해서 말아왔어. 다 대화 니네도 와더니 제와 니네들이 되는 소소 노는 제와이나 다 뒤다야 제편도 다 제조야.
So it is said actually that if one has, and it begins with a complete and abiding faith in Buddha Amitayus, and in this way prepares an image or prepares the sutra and makes offerings and so forth with pure faith in one's home, then one will be able to, without a doubt, increase one's lifespan, even to another 100 years.
다 타리워서는 또 그야 말 걸어서 그 수트에서 다 계좌 먹어서 왔어. 나는 못 알아도 그만도 난좀 노지를 리 말했어. 다 류도 다 계좌 먹을 말해. 된다. 가와이나 시타니 와레스.
And so an important thing to understand is that the bodies of the Buddhas, of the holy being, they are not like our coarse body. And for that reason, wherever we visualize and invite them, we don't need to have any doubt that they will be there, that they will come. So nothing more to explain there. We'll pause there. Ale zung drogyo marideni tengje marwa. So I was just saying to Geshe-la, I kind of warned everybody about the difference in renditions of the mantra or the dharani in this sutra. But anyways, it looks like we will be covering the dharani next time. So in this way, Geshe-la said, we have finished his teaching on these two texts. Yeah. So first we'll do the dedication. Then I understand also it's a holiday weekend for folks. Folks are busy. If after the dedication you need to get on with your Easter preparations, please do. But otherwise, we will have a question and answer. So Geshe-la said, make these prayers of dedication infused with an attitude of rejoicing. Infuse these prayers with an attitude of rejoicing. Changjo zemjo rinpoche maje panam jejo rechi jewa nyamba mebaya gone gondo pewa resho toni tawa rinpoche maje panam jejo rechi jewa nyamba mebaya Gone gondu belvar sho jambe bao jitar kyampata sangpo deya deshe te kungi jesu dalo jir gewa tanje. Sorry, where are we? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. I got that totally wrong today. I don't know what happened. From the top. Duzun shebe gyawa tamshegi ngowa ganla chodu ngapa de dagi gewe tsawa dikun kyang zambo jeji rabdu ngowa. So through the roots of virtue accumulated by both myself and others, may peace and tranquility pervade this world. So we can see with our eyes so many difficulties in the world with the wars, the famine, and disease. Through these merits, may all of these difficulties of these beings be completely cleared away. And all 6 types of ascension beings have within them the imprints for happiness. May they be able to bring, they have the imprints for happiness and love and compassion. May they be able to bring forth this love and compassion. And may I be able to accomplish my aspirations exactly as expressed in these prayers. So we'll pause there. I think my volume's okay. So are there any questions?
Yes, there's one. So Steve has suggested, let me go find it. Yes.
I think I am going to, I'll need to turn my volume up. Old man is standing up. Old man is headless.
Hello, Geshe. So we have a question from Steve, who is asking if you can give advice on how to develop the 4 kinds of faith, especially the last one, irreversible faith.
So the depa di kandes kiegores. So mi dopedewa di kandes chi kiegores di kalop chi naroches.
Me mudupedewa sereta so ta deva jasa na mandala yo wa shombare ni jire kento sare kawa deva jana shomji sala so kawa gina deva jana.
So the first thing, as we speak about developing this irreversible faith, it's maybe to mention the different objects that we can practice developing faith in. And in fact, there's many different objects that you could practice with, like qualities like loving kindness, great love, compassion, and so forth. Jamba Ningje Dang. Things like bodhicitta and also the holy beings like the Buddha, like Venerable Tara, and so forth. These are all potential objects for arising faith. And so what you want to do perhaps to develop this irreversible faith is take one of those possible objects of faith and use reasons to think about the limitless qualities of that object. And then in that way, bring forth a faith that no matter what anyone says is going to be constantly abiding, so is irreversible. So if you're able to do this, to pick that object, to contemplate its positive qualities to the point that the faith is continuously abiding, then you have brought forth that irreversible type of faith. So then, if we have kind of if we think about the qualities of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, if we think about the qualities of things like love and compassion, then there's kind of a natural liking or joy that comes in the mind when we think of those things. And it's very clear. So this is kind of like a vivid type of faith. So the confident faith, that's more, you could think of it if we think about love and compassion, for example, thinking that if I were able to bring forth love and compassion, then all of these positive things would unfold. In this way, you can bring forth faith, that confidence in that love and compassion.
Yeah.
So it's on the basis of actually this vivid faith and this confident faith that one can bring forth that eager faith, right? That's striving at that object of faith.
저 그건 리송 오다 인지 메지 tradition 주 셀 던지게 예대 지원도 가로로 인지 메지 토바지 저 그건도 선바 대바질레서는 년대게 대바.
Because you have that vivid idea of the qualities, and then you have that confidence, right? That, bodhicitta has all of these positive qualities. And then you have this kind of eager faith that arises that because bodhicitta possesses all of these positive qualities, this is something that I definitely need to strive for, that I definitely need to attain.
다 무두비 대바데 강강으로 계신도 왔어. 동이 대바라요 무두바 계지 요아래 이킬라요 무두비 대바 계지 요아래 옹년대라요 계지 요아래.
And so Geshe said, actually, from one understanding, actually, irreversible faith could be experienced in conjunction with any of the other three types of faith, which is steady and unchanging. So we can speak of irreversible faith in the context of the vivid faith that we mentioned, in the context of the eager faith we mentioned, and in the confidence, and connected with the confident faith that we mentioned.
파파토메 자와시마드바 노지 코테 몸에 아이서 실로 말을래 요야 노도 되었어. 파파토메 자와시마드비칼라.
Yeah.
모테 몸에 만다고 실로 말을래.
Ale.
로스 지라.
Yeah.
근데 오코 제체지라더니 야 노노 와도 야라was.
Ya poco más.
파파토메 자와시마드바라was.
Kale. Yo,
파파토메 자와시마드바 고고디와. 오드비칼라. 로스 칼레자 코마테 용고디was.
Ale. Trapukni. Yeah. Ale. So the Geshe was talking about the story of when Asanga was doing his retreat on the deity form of Maitreya. It is said that he would kind of practice in increments of 3 years, and then I guess not having a vision of Maitreya or something like that, he would sort of go out of his cave and sort of search and then come back. This, in a way, shows that he didn't yet midope depa meparwa. That he sort of lacked the complete context of that irreversible faith that we mentioned. Yeah, so he thought, like, despite all of this effort, maybe I won't be able to achieve the results of this sadhana of Maitreya, right? So perhaps if you look at it that way, the faith was not irreversible. So Geshe said maybe that's not the best example, because like we are talking about 3 years, but anyways, yeah, he just thought of this story in that context. Yeah, because Asanga, in a way, he was already considered a bodhisattva by that point. So hopefully then Steve's question was answered about developing that irreversible faith. Okay, yes, okay, good. Yeah, decent set. Anybody else?
Yes, we have a question from Charmaine, who's asking, is self-compassion a mental factor?
Rangi ningje di roa, rang chenzen dang rangi ningje da ochi glavson. Rangi ningje di semchung rebes. Semdan semchung dang ra yomare sora di nanzo tengdi gitsik tabo. But Geshe said yes, you could consider it a mental factor. Sure. Yeah. When we speak about bodhicitta, though, for example, this is not considered a mental factor. It's considered like a main mind. But connected with that bodhicitta, if we talk about ahimsa, non-harmfulness, love, compassion, they are mental factors. But when we speak about dividing different consciousnesses or minds into mind and mental factors, there's actually some disagreement about that. Papa tome dalanjendasur. So, for example, Asanga and Vasubandhu, in some of their literature, they say that bodhicitta is a mental factor, but that's not the view that our system is holding, actually. It's calling it a main mind. So there's differences of opinions, too. So I believe it's Senge Sampo. Does anybody know who Senge Sampo is? He's one of the great Indian acharyas. Senge Sampo. I want to say Buddha Palita, but I feel like that would be wrong. Anyway, yeah, so anyway, there's another acharya, a great Indian commentator who holds a different view, and that's the one that we're holding. And also to understand that actually kind of differentiating between a main mind and a mental factor is not always the easiest thing. So I think that's it for Charmaine's question. Does anyone else have something?
Martha has a question. Go ahead, Martha.
Good evening. Good afternoon. My question is about the pride. What is the root of pride? And when we see the pride in us, what is the antidote? And then when we see other people with pride, what we have to do, how we have to react. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Martha. You're welcome. Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? Because seeing pride in the other people is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look in ourselves, right? Nanso nagya seria di nagya karila tene chungiyares di chikche rwa nagya karila tene chungiyares anin nagya gi nyampo kandes chikres ane mi jenda gi nagya chik thongna di kandes chik sogares.
Yeah, that they would the Borovas. Naja candy jungiare, social pocket, Tony.
Yeah.
Oh, Colteo, Marangalteo, some other Tunjus are in as
So Martha, Geshe is describing pride, or like the root of pride as you asked it. It starts with us seeing a positive quality that we ourselves have. And then we think, well, I have this positive quality and the other person doesn't have that positive quality. And because of that, we start to look down on the other person. This is how we could break down how pride is arising.
That Japa says you are this when you're more.
Japa. Yeah. Japa sana?
You must mean I won't.
Ale. Sha japa ki japa.
That is in a minute. That was.
Okay, so Geshe is describing that underlying that pride, there's another mind. Geshe is describing it as japa. I think it's like a self-inflation. It's an inflated view of one's qualities. Yeah. So for example, if your quality is like at a 10% level, but you're thinking it's at a 20 or 30% level, that's what we mean by an inflated view of yourself, right? So that is kind of underpinning that pride. Yeah. So there are differences between an inflated self-view and pride, but they are very much related. And we talk about the inflated view of oneself first. So an inflated self-view doesn't necessarily mean looking down on others. But when we come to the level of pride, already you're thinking that your qualities are more than others. So there's an attitude of looking down on people at that point. And also this inflated view of oneself is a little bit tricky, because in one way, you need to be a little bit inflated so that you can have confidence to push yourself and try new things, right? So in that way, the inflated isn't totally negative, the same way pride is. But because pride has this part of it, which is like looking down on other people, right? What Geshe is explaining is then it's really kind of infused with something negative. Yeah. An inflated view of yourself that might actually help protect yourself and also make you more willing to go into new experiences and things. So in that way, we won't say it's like 100% negative. And also the inflated sense of yourself, it's not connected with looking down or denigrating others. Yeah. This inflated view of oneself thinks like, I'm doing okay. Things are pretty good. I have these qualities, right? Yeah. And actually, Geshe said that so many of the problems that he hears from people, it's actually the opposite side of this. People feeling lack of confidence, down on themselves, and so forth. So for those people, a little bit of inflation might help to relieve that depression, right? Oh, sorry, not depression. That's the wrong word. That low self-esteem. That low self-esteem. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Ale. Ale. So there was a study recently that looked at people in America, in Japan, in Taiwan, and in Thailand, to see which country had the most people that were affected by low self-esteem. It found that people in Thailand, they didn't struggle so much with low self-esteem, but the Japanese, the Taiwanese, and the Americans did. And so the people who were researching, right, they wanted to probe a little bit further, and they said, okay, this isn't like a West versus Asia thing, because 3 of these countries are in Asia. But how could we explain this lesser problem in terms of low self-esteem in Thailand? And they thought maybe it has something to do with the fact of how widely Buddhism is practiced in Thailand. So they wondered if that was connected with Buddhism. Morongi tu approach. So Geshe is just closing off this conversation that this inflated view is not necessarily negative, but this inflated view can be the foundation, can be the springboard for this pride, and that this pride is necessarily negative because that pride has a component of looking down on others. So, Marta, related to your question about what is the antidote for pride, it's actually to think about things that we don't know, that we don't understand. So, for example, if we talk about the 18 constituents, this is a long list of things in Buddhism. And if we don't know what those 18 constituents are, or even if we know them, but we don't understand them, then this can act as a way to reduce that pride. So thinking about, oh, there's these things I don't know, that can be a good antidote. Similarly, our faith in the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, right? We talked about this practice of reflecting on the qualities of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. If we do that, we'll see that our qualities don't come even close to theirs. So that can also be a really nice antidote to pride.
So to katen da wotni ngaja chimbo yin te chwa to ne la ene sa ma chin ngaja chwa ro ya mo yung ga re
ine ga ngazu konzu na yusira tagu mares mixo so nang la tagure marbe semi
to re ten bi ki tan da chwa to so
yeah definitely. So Geshe said we were just joking about, we have to look at our own pride with the eye, but Geshe was like, yes, the other eye's going out, and that's what you asked. So he said, if Marta, you know something that person doesn't know, you could ask them about it. And then they might see, oh, I actually don't know the answer to this, and Marta does, and that could be a way to reduce their pride. So that's something you could try. Did that get your question, Marta?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay.
pasho ngaja chimbo chi yin ko ro le yoga ten ne tin re she mo mo ja na khoi ngaja ro me ba chwa ro ya ji la ros.
The other thing you could do is, with the person who's really prideful, think about another person whose qualities exceed theirs and then start praising that person. That could really get them reflecting.
Pena sonje chode de ta den zombo le ma kase thama te ma guma du ya twa nyo le ma zo sa che sa ya
Ale.
ma zo cha wa wa
Yeah.
a zo nen zombo le chi ta ga re ko ro ge do thoya ma chi a ko sa
Dul toyasana?
do thoya sen do thoya
Kogi min dul toya komasu.
ta chi de ne ko ro ma ya bu cha thoya ga ta chi
Dul toya. Oh, yeah.
Los ja bo sen ya la ji sa re
Lachi. Oh.
ta ko a le bi pin ke ba
Ale.
ke ba chi
Loso.
ngaja chimbo.
So another story that Geshe wants to tell related to Marta's question about pride is a story from the time of Buddha Shakyamuni. And it was when the Buddha was about to pass into parinirvana. And there was a particular being who was actually suitable to be subdued by the Buddha, to become a disciple of the Buddha. He was a deva, a celestial being, and he was very, very skilled at beautifully playing the flute. Yeah, he was kind of, I think he was called like a king of the devas. And so knowing this, what happened is the Buddha sent out an emanation body to the particular realm where that flute-playing deva abided. And this emanation body had the appearance of a very simple beggar who played the flute, though, very beautifully. Sorry, Janyan. Sorry, not the flute. He played the sitar very, very beautifully. And so this king of the devas, who was very good at the flute, he would hear this sitar being played very beautifully when he was trying to sleep at night. And so then, actually thinking that, oh, his music would nicely complement mine, he called the sitar player to come and join him in the palace. And so this being, this king of the devas, he thought, there's no being that can play the instrument superior to me. And he thought, actually, even my sitar playing is better than his sitar playing. So he entered with a competition with this emanation of the Buddha. And how the competition worked is that they would take a string, one string out of the sitar and then play and see who sounded better, the second string out of the sitar and then play and see who was playing better, and so forth. And with each string that was removed from the sitar, this celestial king, the sound of his music became worse and worse. But this beggar emanation of the Buddha, the sound remained just as nice. So then the celestial king asked, how is it possible that as we take out each string, my sound has become so horrible, but the sound of your music is still so sweet? And so at that time, the celestial king, his pride was subdued, right? Because he saw that he wasn't the best at that. And when his pride was subdued, there was an opening for him to be able to hear those qualities. And then because of that, right, the Buddha was able to explain him the instructions on the dharma, which would lead him on the path to liberation. So sorry, Geshe said it was a long story to answer Martha's question, but in short, there are many antidotes to pride for both oneself and others. So maybe we'll go to the next person with a question.
Annie, please go ahead.
First of all, I just wanted to say that Sangye Sangpo is Haribhadra.
Haribhadra, thank you so much. Yes. Yes. Did you think of that right away and you were too shy to tell me?
Well, and then I put it in.
You can interrupt. It's okay.
Okay. And the other thing was, I was wondering if you could give us the word for the inflated sense of self that is not pride in Tibetan. What is
Japa? It's japa.
Oh, japa. Okay. Okay.
Ra gata gya yata gya.
Okay.
Ga gyak. We're trying to do it in Lhasa Tibetan for you, Annie.
Okay.
Ra jata jata di jaga gyak.
Okay.
Ra gata ga yata gya.
Okay.
Ga gyak.
Okay.
I think the sound is similar to what we would say for corpulent or fat.
Oh, okay.
Like that kind of, but here it has a sense of inflated.
Okay.
So it's one of the 52 mental factors,
Oh, okay.
if that helps.
Yes. And does Geshe have time to talk about the fifth Dalai Lama story he was gonna? Or we can do it later. The fifth Dalai Lama, he was going to tell something about.
He said he already told you guys the story about the
other one.
flute and
Okay, so that's enough.
guitar. So next time.
Okay.
He said if he tells everything, then he runs out of stories for next time. So he's feeling a bit cheap about his stories.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Any other questions?
No, nothing in social media.
Yes. So thank you then. If there's no other questions, as we're at time, Geshe wishes you all a wonderful holiday and be happy. And and fifth Dalai Lama story, Annie, it's coming next time. It's coming next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.